Hello, YouTube, and welcome to Level-Headed News. This is your host, Brenda. 11 articles in this episode for you on pretty much the same subject. Twists here and there. And I'm waiting here to make sure audio is working. And it's working because I see the lights on there. And I think it seems to be working here. Yeah. Well, we'll hop right on into them then. Comedy. Yeah. Hasn't been one thing. The first article here is off of WND.com, and I'm waiting for the hand. Here we go. It's to and get her to scroll up a little bit here. Some bidding further down. The leading immigration expert has warned that at least 50 million Muslims are willing to approve of violence and terror to defend their region. Of 1 billion adult Muslims in the world, attached to an arc of Islam, little worth on rights of women, home people of other faiths, according to the Dutch professor Rudd. In an interview with German news website, he said 100 million conservative Muslims, more than 50 million are okay with using violence against non-Muslims, but conservative estimate, Copeman said, the number is likely higher. Comments come as people worldwide have protested that the Daily Mail called U.S. President Donald Trump's Muslim ban. The president's executive order, struck down by Washington state judge and upheld in the Ninth Circuit, placed a 90-day ban on travel from 7 countries, leaving 90% of the world's Muslims unaffected. Implemented a halt on refugee resettlement from 6 of the countries, indefinite halt on resettlement of Syrian refugees. The 21st, here we go. Since January the 21st, when Trump took office, 2,000 refugees have come to the U.S. for permanent resettlement from the 7 countries Trump wants to ban: Syria, Somalia, Sudan, Iran, Iraq, according to State Department Refugee Processing Center. Koopmans, who is a professor of psychology and immigration research at Humboldt University and the director of research W. Berlin Social Science Center, said it's important for every million is a violent attack, but radicalization in America, most of Europe's born overseas, Egypt or Saudi Arabia. The radicals, they provide them shelter or simply radicalization, Koopmans added. Koopmans cited the U.S.-based center, his estimates of 50 million violent Muslims, he added. There is a difference between anti-Muslim baiting and justified. There's nothing wrong with foreign cultures as long as they are looking for the connection to the majority in society and enrich our countries. But most of those who spread their medieval beliefs, widespread in Islamic countries, must be met with. Koopman stressed that the EU is careful to let suspected Islams have uncontrolled travel to. He said refugees and migrants should be placed initially in transit zones as long as their identity is unclear. Mail's translation of the German news site. Bishop predicts Europe will be Muslim in 10 years. Can come on the heels of warnings from religious leaders in Europe. Liberati, Bishop of Pompeii, Italy, was quoted in the Catholic journal La Fede last month as said will be Muslim within 10 years. It's because of our stupidity, the Archbishop said, we have a weak Christian faith. The immigration policies that are safe, Liberati said, moral and religious decadence favors Islam. We need a true all this to Islam. They have children or Europe Monday with the news that the UK's first major department store has decided to sell women, Heat Street reported. In seven stock UK units in flagship London store on Oxford Street and Leicester suit. Article that is off of com, and I'm waiting for the hamster. Article is called "Media Silent as Radical Muslims Riots Take Over the Streets," and a little bit here. Five suburbs of Paris, France have been put off by police after riots destroyed the area for the past. Rioters have set fires and attacked everyone they have came in contact with. Allah Akbar. As mayhem in the streets erupted, police brutality spread. Hang on. Ads up here on my screen. Foolishness stopped. So, police have been forced to use increased force, including 5 rounds in some cases, as the riots have escalated. Many residents and even journalists have been hospitalized, including an employee of French TV company BMTV. National FN Le Pen tweeted this amateur video, which shows chaotic scenes, including after cars were set on fire and a man yelling Allah Akbar. And there's video here that you can. It's unclear if the cause of these riots had any religious reasoning prompting it. Vandals are just using it as a reason to give in to their violent urges. It is very unfortunate that any religion doesn't discourage these types of random violent acts. Next article is off of countdowntozerotime.com. Says the Trump has hit the fan. 7th appeals interjects. ICE officials given full authority to deport illegal voters, and 9th court rules illegal aliens entering the U.S. right to legal representation. Court of Appeals interjects ICE officials given full authority to deport illegal voters. It has been a tireless first 3 weeks for the Trump administration. It continues to be hit from all sides, including federal judges who seek to disrupt the new status quo. But that streak has just ended. Vessel News reports that the 7th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Chicago has now ruled that the Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials as well as local law enforcement now have the ability to deport illegal voters. Will stand for all of America. It cut the dismay of a Peruvian woman who voted illegally during multiple elections. She will face deportation for her crimes. While WikiLeaks confirmed that John Podesta, former chairman of Hillary's campaign, Bill Clinton, and counselor to Barack Obama, defraud in support of the Democratic Party, his closest aides haven't yet released their promised evidence. The only times in U.S. history the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled in a way that helps America. There is a saying that even a blind squirrel finds a nut from time to time. Another popular way of saying close to the same thing is that even a broken wall clock is right twice a day. Surely be even more such sayings being created now that the blind squirrels, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, have chosen time to finally come out with the ruling that helps the American people. It's ruled that those who have been apprehended entering this country illegally have no legal right to representation. It seems as if the word illegal means something after all. That it is not for lawyers to be given to those who enter America illegally. Are going to have an absolute, as a just rule that it is now permissible to harm, torture, or otherwise abuse these people. But when it happens, just remember that it is not true. It is not saying that they have no human rights. Purposeful confusion, often employed by simply that they have no legal right to an attorney. This means that the American taxpayer is no longer going to have to foot the bill for the legal costs that pile up higher than all. The Constitution promises American citizens the right to legal counsel, but we are not taking about citizens. This has long been the stance of those who the Constitution. It is so true that even those who do not have the firm grip of the Constitution, like the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, for instance, can see it. What I have is off of, I've got to wait for it to come up here. It's off of DeSouza, and it says Muslim Olympian denied, well, goodness gracious, what is wrong with my tongue? Muslim Olympian detained because of President Trump's travel ban was detained under Obama. Originally posted at the Washington Examiner, and it says reporters are at it again and again and again and again. This fire on Trump administration involves, and I'm not sure I can pronounce this person's name, it's Muhammad, a New Jersey native who made headlines last year when she became the first female Muslim American medal for the United States. Muhammad, a lifelong American citizen, misleadingly claimed in an interview last week that she was detained just a few weeks ago by U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents. Held for 2 hours without explanation. The 7th earned her the entire news cycle as several journalists ran with reports suggesting and outright alleging that the American Olympian snared in the president's executive order temporarily barring immigration from 7 Middle Easterns. But Muhammad has since clarified of her initial comments, and customs official with direct knowledge of the incident who confirmed she was indeed detained disputed much of how she characterized what happened. She comes and goes many times. She travels quite extensively. She has never been stopped before. The officials who spoke on the anonymity said Monday in an interview with the Washington Examiner. She wasn't targeted. The checks are totally random checks that we all might. Muhammad was also not held for 2 hours, he said, adding that the entire ordeal wrapped up in under an hour. Recognized from the get-go. For February 7th interview, Muhammad didn't put a hard date on when she was detained by customs. Worth noting that she is an outspoken Trump critic and that she is extremely displeased with his immigration order. What Olympian told Pop Sugar's Lindsay Miller about being detained by customs. Pop Sugar asked her, do you know anyone who was directly impacted by Trump's travel ban? And she says, well, I personally was held at customs for 2 hours just a few weeks ago. I don't know why. I can't tell you why it happened to me, but I know that I'm Muslim. I have an Arabic name, and even though I represent Team USA and I have it where it doesn't change how you look and how people perceive you. I know that people talk about this having a lot to do with these 7 countries in particular, but I think the net is cast a little bit wider. I'm included in a woman who wears a hijab. Over the win of Muhammad's story and rushed to publish reports tying her story to the president's immigration order. Tafa, I'm not sure how it's pronounced, Muhammad, was detained because of President Trump's travel ban, read a headline published in the Time magazine's motto. The UK's independent story titled U.S. Olympic fencer Muhammad says she was detained by customs after Donald Trump's Muslim ban. The Daily Mail said of the incident that it comes after Donald Trump signed an executive order currently suspended, banning travel from 7 largely Muslim countries, causing chaos in U.S. airports. Muhammad being detained illustrates why Trump's Muslim ban is not who we are as Americans, read the headline published by the New York Daily News. The Hill published an article whose opening paragraph read, a Muslim American Olympic medalist says she was detained by customs for nearly 2 hours without explanation after President Trump's travel ban was instituted a few weeks ago. ESPN published stories whose entire purpose was custom tail to Trump's immigration order, though the reports don't come right out and say it. Journalists reacted to the story on social media with the usual mixture of despair and outrage. A particular new cycle is that Muhammad was detained in 2016, weeks before Trump had even been sworn in as America's 45th president. This all happened in December, which was well before the executive order, the customs official told the Examiner, which is a totally separate incident. Noted several days after her February 7th interview that she December 2016 when she said just a few weeks ago, thanks to all who reached out regarding the December incident at customs, I will continue to voice by profiling and bigotry, she said in a tweet on. Let's pause now to review some quick facts. Was still president in December of 2016, meaning Muhammad was detained under America's 44th commander-in-chief. Trump was sworn into office on January the 20th. The executive order on immigration was signed into law on January the 27th. To put it plainly, reports suggesting that the executive order had ensnared an American champion are totally false. A few points bear further discussion, and none of them will reflect good or the press. First, it's mind-boggling that no one before the 7th thought to ask her for the exact date on which she was detained. It's a duty of a journalist to get the who, what, when, where, why, and how to every story. That's Muhammad's interviewers didn't think to pursue the when is astounding. Isn't blameless in all of this. A less than charitable person would suspect her of being purposefully vague and imprecise. Yes or no question about the president's immigration order. Instead of giving a simple answer, she provided an anecdote involving a very misleading use of just a few weeks ago. In that interview are also suggestive. Here's the next part of the transcript. That must have been a scary moment for you. And she says, it's really hard. My human response is to cry because I was so sad and upset and disheartened, and it pointed. At the same time, people who feels like I have to be strong for those people who may not be able to find that strength. I feel like I have to speak up for those people whose voices go unheard. It was a really hard 2 hours, but at the same time, I made it home. I try to remember to be positive and to try to leave these situations, even if they may be difficult. I think that we will come out on top as women, as people of color, as Muslims, as transgender people, as people who are part of the disabled community. I think that we'll come out on top. Did not respond to the examiner's request for comment, did no favors with her language. Her remarks seemed to suggest her detainment had something to do with the president's executive order. Evident from the fact that so many reporters took her report to the immigration order had affected her personally. Lastly, the biggest problem with this particular news cycle is that so many reporters took Muhammad at her word to corroborate her story with customs. That much is evident from the fact that several journalists thought the incident occurred post January 27th. This entire news article and the result, reporters rushing to fill the blanks and vague remarks made by a Muslim woman who they thought the president's immigration executive order disturbed when we saw the story. The customs official said, "We didn't mistreat her, what she has done." And if you want to read more on this, you can go to the Washington Examiner. And um, next one we have is off of tv.org. Gifts. Obama released a flood of illegal alien kids up here. It's been near left office, and we're looking under much. Nearly a month since he left office, and we're looking under the White House sofa and finding little nuggets of crap President Obama left us before he took off for the beach. To research data from the Office of Refugee Resettlement, it turns out Obama administration released another 7,686 illegal alien kids into the United States during the month of December, Obama's final month as president. 48 kids per day. Ever the lover of all things amnesty, Obama had a strong panache for allowing minors, or at least those claiming to be minors, to come into the United States unlawfully, only to be sent off to live with usually relatives who are living here illegally. But it appears a dash to enact sweeping reforms before stage left, the Obama administration released even more kids in December than in previous months. For example, the nearly 7,700 unaccompanied alien children processed and released by the Office of Refugee Resettlement, 1,000 more than the 6,623 kids who were released the month before. 1,600 more kids than the 6,051 the Obama administration shipped off in October. Scroll up a little more here. Come on, hamster. Okay. Broken down for again, huh? Be a video and act the same way. My goodness, come on. Well, and we wait. Mister. Okay, broken down further, an ORR analysis shows that the vast majority of these children claim to be between the ages of 50 to 40, and about 40% of them don't even show up to court for their final hearing. The Obama administration followed up interior enforcement by releasing several thousand more into the United States each month. 20,360 illegal alien children were released into American communities between October last year alone, with January's months of fiscal been allowed to stay in the United States after crossing the border illegally. About 40% of the number of kids that were released in all of 2050 total. According to ORR data, the Obama administration released a total of 153,862 alien children into the U.S. in October of 2013 and December of 2016. And I'll repeat that. It was 3,062 unaccompanied alien children. Student population 50. That's enough illegal alien children to fill up 280 Washington, D.C. middle schools. Up a little bit more. Comments at the bottom of this if you want to pull it up and look at those for yourself. They aggravate you as badly as me. The next one here is off of refugee resettlement wordpress.com, and it says, our resettlement contractors claim they have been told will end on March the 3rd. You don't need to have a moratorium to slow the refugee resettlement program to the point where it dries up. And we get some juicy news here from the National Public Radio story from yesterday. Amos tells us that the State Department says there will be no more refugees arriving in the U.S. after March the 3rd. They expect to hit the 50,000 ceiling. Is that because they expect to hit the 50,000 ceiling by then? Unless they plan to haul them in a day. We were just short of 35,000 as of this morning, so it is unclear if this is a hard and fast date. The resettlement contractors shared the official guideline or guidance they received with reporter Amos. 2,000 refugees already vetted and approved for travel have arrived since the ruling was handed down on February the 9th. But over the weekend, according to refugee advocates who shared the official guidance with the State Department, alerted resettlement agencies that new arrivals will end on March the 3rd. And there is a little enclosure here from the editor. It says, readers, this is an example of what Trump is up against. Here you have federal contractors taking comments to a friendly reporter at NPR. This could this notice of a March 3rd halt the program effectively a moratorium of 7 months. The doesn't begin until October the 1st. I've argued that in this spur Congress to action to reform the program, the refugee spigot would need to be closed for longer than the original 120-day proposal, or of what Amos is reporting. Court that blocked the president's travel ban on people from 7 majority Muslim nations did not directly rule out the 2 provisions in the executive order. agencies are scrambling to figure out what they will do if the provisions survive. The Ninth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals judges did not address perhaps the most sweeping provision in the Trump order, in the numbers of refugees allowed to come to the U.S. President Trump slashed the refugee quota for fiscal year 2017 by more than half to 50,000. So maddening, just because Obama wished for 110,000 a year doesn't mean Trump cut our half. 50,000 is probably just slightly less flow since 9/11. In addition, the court did not rule on a provision that would make it easier for states and cities to veto. You don't need to have a moratorium to slow down the refugee resettlement program to the point where it dries up and withers on the vine, says Bill Fleck, director of Watch Refugee Program. Let the wailing begin. Right, more, but if you have been working on the refugee program where you live and pushing for more transparency and involvement by state and local elected officials, you must read on. The contractors are scared to death that the state and local elected officials will play a greater role in the future, thus possibly messing up the relationship with the feds. You will be especially annoyed about how they say they do extensive coordination with local officials, yes, friendly ones. The refugee resettlement program has been partnership between the State Department and 9 private voluntary agencies, based groups. Together they form a nationwide bureaucracy for resettlement. Remember that, a nationwide bureaucracy for resettlement. 3 of the 9 contractors are secular organizations, while 6 are faux religious charities. These will be sacrificing their own private money to help the stranger, not reaching wallets. For BizPack Review, Sheriff Clark's crackdown on illegals triggers busloads to arrive in Milwaukee. Took to the streets of Milwaukee on Monday to protest a plan by Milwaukee County Sheriff David A. Clark that would effectively turn his deputies into immigration agents. This is De Frontera bust in from outside the city to march under the banner Day Without Latinos, Immigration, and Refugees, according to the Wisconsin State Journal. More from the State Journal. It says a sea of demonstrators marched on Monday from Milwaukee's predominantly Hispanic South Side to the downtown courthouse to protest a plan that would deputize local law enforcement officers as federal immigration agents. Busloads of demonstrators from about a dozen communities around Wisconsin arrived to join local protesters in the mile-long march. Parents with children in strollers, young men hoisting Mexican and American flags, and older supporters mingled in the crowd, 10,000 to 20,000 by police, chanting, Si Podemos can. The Trump administration policy, much like the Obama administration, criminal, illegal, include murderers, rapists, but president of Voices de la Frontera told the State Journal, people are afraid. Got to be afraid, you know, Flores said. Like many families, there's a lot. They are not criminals. We are not criminals. Voices de la Frontera was clear on what they'd like to see Sheriff Clark do. It says, as for Clark, he released a statement that showed he was not backing down. There must be zero tolerance for allowing people to illegally enter this country and establish permanent residency, the hard-nosed sheriff said. The protesters marched against President Donald Trump and his hardline immigration. There's a lot of hate in this country. President, we march, he said. There are additional videos and images from Twitter in this article if you want to pull them up and take a look at them. And that's what I had for you there. The next one here, Conservative Daily Post, and it says Trump ambassador Greece to leave the EU after Merkel's humiliating act yesterday. We looked at what Greece must be thinking about Angela Merkel of Germany and the EU leader wanting to give $76 million to refugees in order for them to leave the European Union that was not living or was not willing to give them a nickel to stay. The question asked was far more urgent than had been thought when the article was birthed. For only one day later, part two is born. Greece is again thinking of ditching the failing EU as they should have before. They also plan to tell Merkel way she can fold the euro and where to place it when it completes, because they also want to drop the EU's currency too. Now, while it is not said or even hinted, handing out a fortune like Christmas presents to every refugee was the reason for this news coming in, as it only one day removed from the German announcement of the plan. Imagine that it played no role as we predicted. Germany made money off of Greece failing. EU working Joe did not enjoy it very much, but before anyone wants to argue that it is impossible, let us quote Forbes, who sums it up like this. In 2015, Germany profited from the ongoing Greek just the sum of 100 billion euros, according to a new study. The billions consisted of money saved by the lower interest payment on funds the German government borrowed amid investor flights to safety. In English, Merkel hosed Greece and made a fortune doing it. Enough said. In conditions that are not at all alien from the third world conditions in some areas, or as Zero Hedge blogs put it, economic doldrum than the Great Depression. Raised when accurately said that not only did he have reservations about the longevity of the Eurozone, but that if Greece is going to make it as a nation, then they should flee the EU and return to their own currency that served them well for many years, the drachma. The same every time, or try that again. The problem is the same every time that the name Greece is ever in the news anymore. No one talks about vacationing there anymore. Who can afford that? Or touring there, even from within the EU, more affordable. But instead, the talk is always of the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF. Greece cannot afford to make the payments to their creditors again, being warned again that it could harm their arrangement. Yawn again, and it may end in yet another repayment scam, used as the carrot and stick routine to keep Greece paying for or paying toward their own demise a bit longer before they leave or are thrown out of the EU. Anyhow, Greece always get the stick, and yet they stay to the idea of EU membership for reasons that no one knows. Much of the fault, much of this is the fault of none other than the Greeks themselves. They overborrow, they lived lifestyles way beyond their means, they hardly had a work week. They, in terms of social promises, this would mean that Greece, except for the fact that every nation in the EU has lived beyond their means to the point that even millions of dollars are perhaps into the hands of the very people who helped nail shut the already closed coffin on Greece. Said that ruffled so many feathers was to be expected since it was truthful. The truth has no place on the world stage. That the EU needs a little taming, something that the United Kingdom already said by leaving tire tracks. Below does nothing more than ask the question of why seeing Greece in the same situation, no matter how many times they keep getting helped, meant as a life preserver for the sinking and needy Greece, dead. As such, Trump's observant nominee for ambassador to the EU, it is current form that euro can hold on much longer than 18 months. If this is considered wrong-minded in some way, it's more kind of him. Is it more kind of him to lie? If a man's drowning, call for help. If a doctor sees an illness, should the doctor keep the secret because it may scare the patient while the cure is at hand? Likewise, if the ambassador be a true friend to the nations that he's appointed to speak with, should he not at least try and warn them that the boat is taking on too much water? In Greece is that just like every time the banker and lenders play a huge role in economic meltdown rather than pay their fair share, they build the little guy. The little guy's doing. He TV at the bank 75 pieces of junk mail using known tricks that have long suckered people into buying things that they can't afford. Never mind that everyone's home from underneath them. Guy pay with austerity. Guy off from any help to pay for what the banks helped do to him. If anyone hearing this was him, the EU be one of pro or con? The European Union can blame Donald Trump for what happens if Greece leaves the EU, but Trump was still in his late 30s when the groundwork for Greece's departure was set. I mean, Trump for the Vietnam War. Instead, now that Greece sees that there is still an England after Brexit and that they had been lied to about their own Grexit, had enough, perhaps, and then Angela Merkel may just stand there too perplexed to understand why this happens, because after all, matters of economic fact are all Greek to her. Malachi on the future of the euro. If you want to see more comments on that, there's a link you can click to read that. And what the Eurozone survives, I think, very much question that agenda. He told Greek SKAI TV's late night chat show stories. We have had the exit of the UK. There are elections in other European countries. So I think it is something that will be determined over the course of the next year and a half. And on the brink, it seems like deja vu. Will it ever end? I think this time I would have to say that the odds are higher that Greece itself will break out of the euro, unquote. Article I have for you. News.com. Court rules illegal aliens entering the U.S. now have zero right to legal representation. And I touched on this earlier in another article, but here's what this one says. Red State Watchers U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals Court just ruled immigrants illegally have no right to legal representation, from the Wall Street Journal, February the 7th. Post Ninth Court rules entering the U.S. now have zero right to legal representation appeared first on his World Report. Links in that you can click on to take you to those to read more about that. The next one that I have here is off of WTHR.com. Backyard. This is out of Noblesville, Indiana. Noblesville man killed in I-465 crash caused by suspected drunk driver. And you're going to wonder, well, why she got that in here with the immigration and all? Indianapolis, WTHR, an Indianapolis woman believed to be in the country illegally is accused of driving drunk this morning and killing a Noblesville man on the city's northwest side on Interstate 465 near Michigan Road. The victim is former missionary. The suspect, state police investigator, believe the country illegally. The collision happened around 2:30 a.m. Monday, sending David Crins, I'm not sure how his last name's pronounced, car careening off the interstate and into a ditch. Investigators say it rolled over several times. 6-year-old father and grandfather. Co-workers were shocked and tearful. Man, Harry Strout said, a good person out with. Hang on. The guy you like to hang out with as well as work with. As manager at Famous Dave's Barbecue, Crin reputation as a leader who put others ahead of himself. According to the company's operation manager, Crin closed the restaurant Sunday night, then worked into early morning, completing inventory before heading to his home in Noblesville. Dave was an inspirational leader. Stroud explained he spent much of his life before entering the restaurant industry being a missionary. Elizabeth Vargas Hernandez was speed when her SUV rammed into Crin's car. Hernandez smelled of alcohol and failed the field sobriety test. The 35-year-old and her 3 passengers had just left a bar. Hernandez is charged with operating while intoxicated, causing death. The state police investigation also uncovered evidence that the woman entered the country illegally and has never held a driver's license. It is not clear. Try this again. It is not clear how that may affect her criminal case or ability to obtain bond and bail. The Marion County Sheriff's Office does not routinely notify federal authorities when suspected undocumented immigrants are arrested and jailed for serious unrelated crimes. In an email, a sheriff spokesperson said arrests are public record. ICE has access to arrest records. CSO does not address immigration status issues. In the meantime, Crin's co-workers have established a GoFundMe page to help his family that you can click on if you would like to help with that. Map in this of it took place, and being from the area, I know that area well. I've been in the that back when I was driving all over the state, many of a day. The next one and final one that I have for you today is off of BizPack Review, and to know more about Trump's targeting law-abiding innocent illegals. In hysterics again over the fact that President Trump is allowing those tasked with deporting illegal criminal aliens. The Senate Minority Leader wants to nail down some more specifics. Has a tweet here that says, troubled by lack of transparency and due process violations in ICE enforcement actions, calling on ICE and arrest info. Senator also said something else as reported by Fox News Chad, or I guess it is Chad Pergram, and his tweet says, Schumer says targeting law-abiding innocent immigrant families is a waste of limited resources and undermines law enforcement. Law-abiding and illegal immigrant, mutually exclusive, go unnoticed by many. And there's a bunch of tweets from people here. One says, they are here illegally, then they are not law-abiding. It says, law-abiding illegals? Yep, makes perfect sense. Just don't start crying again. Law-abiding illegals, it doesn't get any dumber than this. Another one says, why is strengthening our borders a bad idea? Should we wait until another terrorist attack? They're here illegally. They aren't innocent, laughing out loud. We're on alert. Law-abiding illegal aliens, by the way. Law-abiding immigrant families have nothing to fear, only illegal immigrants. Another one, absolutely correct. However, if you came here illegally, you are not law-abiding. Is Schumer really that stupid, or is he a liar? And the article says, all know the answer to that question. So when did Obama illegals? And to a much lesser extent than many of us would like, but he did. Or then, and Collins puts out a tweet here that says 2.5 million deportations later, and now Schumer wants names and dates. What a joke of a human being, law-abiding. And finally, here's a tumor from somebody called 50 Questions of a of a tombstone. It says, "Rest in peace, Democratic Party, 1776 to 2017, protested itself to death." I thought that was an appropriate one to end this segment with. So if you like what I'm doing here, give it a thumbs up, share it on your social media so everybody gets to hear the news, and don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll stay informed.